The information provided on this podcast by Dr. Jennifer Sims, DC, interview guests, show hosts, or substitute hosts is not intended or implied to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. It's for general information purposes only. Information from this podcast should not replace the appropriate consultation and examination process by a licensed physician. Always consult your own physician prior to changing any current medical directive or prescription. And now, seriously, girl, listen to your body with Dr. Jen.
Hi, and welcome to Seriously Girl, Listen to Your Body. I'm your host, Dr. Jen, and I am so excited today because we're going to talk about genomic testing and what all that means. And I have the pleasure of having Kellie Caldwell Straub with us today. Kellie's resume is so long that I'm going to have to kind of give it abbreviated because it can be a whole show in itself. She's super awesome. She is currently the Director of Strategic Initiatives for Advanced Genomic Solutions. That's how she and I met, actually. We'll talk about that in a minute. And she is responsible for the development, oversight, and implementation of the programs that they have there. She also is the founder and CEO of Greater Possibilities, LLC, which pretty much is super cool too, this could be a whole nother podcast, but she helps entrepreneurs, business owners, leaders, pretty much individuals help create clarity about who they are, what their mission is, and how to develop authentic communications. She has over 27 years of experience with entrepreneurial counseling and coaching, over 25 years of combined health, wellness, personal training, and group exercise. Somewhere in her resume, I believe she also has an MBA, right? Am I right in there? Yep, yes. In public health, healthcare management. And, you know, the best credential that she has is she's a mom of 3 kids, because, you know, we're partial to that on my show. So, Kellie, without further ado, welcome to Seriously Girl, Listen to Your Body. Thanks for spending some time with me today.
Oh, Jen, thank you so much for having me. And it's so funny because when you give your bio to somebody and they read it, you're like, wow, I'm just a normal, average, everyday human being, just like everybody else. And, you know, my biggest passion in the whole world is genetics. And so that's how you and I met. And that's what I do in my everyday, day in and day out life. And really, it's about helping people. You know, what I love so much is helping people tap into their potential and become their greatest possibility and really embrace who they were created to be. And that's always what I've done in all of my entrepreneurial endeavors. But to be able to do that in this capacity with advanced genomic solutions and really helping people dive into their genes and their personal biology and what their genetics mean and apply that to their life so that they can make smarter lifestyle choices and be happier and healthier and more vibrant and have more energy on a day out and day out basis. I just feel like I have the dream job of all time. It's so cool.
Well, I want to speak for a minute to how we met, and it was because I had reached out to you because I was super interested in the idea that, you know, you can take the information that we have about genes and apply it to healthcare. And to be clear, and I'm sure we'll talk about this, but just because you have a gene doesn't mean that you're going to get that disease, right? I tell my patients that all the time. Just because you have the breast cancer gene doesn't mean you're going to get breast cancer. So please be wise in your choices and don't make radical decisions based on things like that. But what was really cool about we're going to say AGS because I still have a mouthful of braces, and it's a lot to say Advanced Genomic Solutions all the time. So what was cool about your product or testing is that you guys take the genetic information and you make it useful, right? So let's start with the first thing. How is this different from 23andMe? Why would I want to do something like this?
Well, there's a lot of differences, and genetic testing is all the rage right now. So you can't turn on the television or listen to the radio or log on to the internet without seeing some kind of advertisement, mass media advertisement for genetic testing. So genetic testing is the wave of the future. In fact, my undergraduate degree was in behavioral genetics and psychology. And that was right at the very beginning of mapping the human genome. And what I really wanted to do was dive into, what is genetics going to look like in the future? And we weren't really quite there yet. Well, we're there now, and it's becoming the wave of the future. There is no doubt in any capacity whatsoever that genetics is the future of health, wellness, medicine, and clinical care, hands down. We only know what about 4% of the genes in the human body do. We have the whole entire genome map. So over the course of the next, weeks and months and decades, we're going to be understanding and uncovering what does all of that mean and how do we use it. That goes back to your initial question is, how does AGS differ from companies, say, like 23andMe? So it would probably help for me to first explain who AGS is. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay, so AGS is a business-to-business genetic testing company. We specialize in working with individuals like yourself that have a existing client or patient base of individuals that would like to undergo genetic testing and work with their provider on understanding their genetics, the genetics that we cover in health and wellness genetic testing. With that being said, we also do corporate wellness programs and voluntary benefit programs. So we work with companies from very, very small mom and pop shops all the way up to corporations that have tens and hundreds of thousands of individuals that are implementing the genetic testing as a health and wellness benefit. So maybe alongside basic biometric screening or even in lieu of or in place of biometric screening. So that's what we specialize in. You will never, ever, ever see an advertisement on television for advanced genomic solutions. And part of the reason is that we are not a data informatics company. So companies like 23andMe and Ancestry.com and almost all the genetic testing companies that are coming onto the market on almost a daily basis now are collecting DNA, and you basically pay to become their product. Now that's perfect.
Jump in here for a second, which is freaky. Which is honestly of a concern, because just like we do a Google search for shoes, the next thing you know, on the side of our screen, it's showing these shoes and all these suggestions are populating of things we want to buy. So I think that's really important that AGS, that's not what you guys are in business to do, is to take that data and then use it to manipulate or get us to buy other things. So.
Exactly. And I'm going to be very upfront with you. Our tests are a little bit more expensive. And the reason they're a little bit more expensive is we're not taking somebody's $99 to sequence their DNA and their genome, and that afternoon or tomorrow or next week or the year after selling that for hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars out the back door. We take genetic testing privacy very, very, very seriously. There's two major regulations. One is GINA, G-I-N-A. That's the Genetic Information Non-Disclosure Act of 2008. GINA basically says that no genetic data by anybody, any company, can ever be released to an employer, and that an individual can never be fired or lose their insurance cover based on their genetics. Really great legislation, totally believe in it. We adhere to that. So in our business to business work, we never release data to employers. Our requisition forms are really simple. We just need the client's name and information and then their provider information, and that authorizes us to release their report to their provider. Our reports are encrypted. Links are only good for 30 days. After that, if you don't download your report and access it, you've got to contact us and say, hey, I need another encrypted link. But the reason we do this, and we call it AGS Gene Shield, that's a proprietary privacy and security policy that we have in place to make sure that clients of yours, patients of yours, individuals purchasing from us directly or through our corporate wellness programs know beyond a shadow of a doubt that we will never, ever, ever, under any circumstances, no exception, sell, share, disclose, transfer, do research on genetic data. If you think about it, your Social Security card, your driver's license, your credit cards can actually all be reissued, but your DNA cannot. So when your DNA is out in the world, it is out. In fact, several prominent universities, including Harvard and some others, have taken de-identified data, which is what happens when you do a 23andMe or an ancestry test. That data, if you select it to be as de-identified, but de-identified data can actually be re-identified within a matter of just hours. It's not that hard. It doesn't take that long.
Yeah.
Because if you've ever had any kind of, dental work or blood work or, any kind of that work done, your DNA is out there. And so to put it out into a public place and in public databases where it's being sold to research companies, pharmaceutical companies, insurance companies, we're not really seeing the negative effects of that right now in 2019. Where I think we're going to see it, and especially for your listeners, is when our children, 10, 20, 30, 40 years from now, decide to go get insurance or medical coverage or, whatever they're trying to do. And somebody says, oh, we see that back in 2019, your mom did a genetic test, and in her DNA sequencing, it turns out that she has scary gene X, Y, or Z. And we're not going to insure you or cover you until you get tested. I don't ever want my children to go through that situation. And that's just me talking personally. I want to really caveat that. That's not necessarily an AGS message. That's a Kellie Caldwell Straub message, saying when I was looking for a genetic testing company to be part of their executive leadership team and grow this incredible industry, client data safety and security was my number one priority. And that, hands down across the board, is what sets AGS apart. Secondary to that is our actionable reports and helping people use their personal biology to make smarter lifestyle choices. So what we test for is everything related to somebody's health and wellness. That could be macronutrients, micronutrients, exercise and activity ratios, stress, risk, food behaviors, alcohol, caffeine, lactose tolerance, fat consumption, which is huge. I hope we talk about that today. All these kinds of great things about health and wellness and how you can make different lifestyle choices and behavioral decisions consciously to achieve greater outcomes. We also do drug sensitivity testing. We're launching a cardiovascular test, a microbiome test. We have a skin health test. So everything's steeped in this area of health and wellness. What we don't do is ancestry, paternity, or scary genes. And we call them scary genes, illness or disease markers. And I love that you talked about the breast cancer gene. And I just want to speak to your listeners about that real quick. My mom battled cancer 3 times in her life. Her first diagnosis was when she was in her early 30s, and then again at 45, and she died at 47. Her third was a metastasis to her lungs. And there was no history of breast cancer anywhere in our family. On either side, I have a lot of history of cancer, prostate cancer on my paternal side. I have chosen, although I've had genetic counselors and physicians along the way really recommend, you really should get your BRCA gene test done. And I thought, should I? I mean, is that really must-know information for me? Because I do believe that there is this concept of self-fulfilling prophecies, right? And, if we know that we have this gene, do we have that little wheel working in our mind all the time?
Right. When am I going to get it? It's going to happen.
When am I going to get it?
Yeah, I'm constantly checking. There's a lump, yeah.
Yeah. So you're freaking out. You're having all of these invasive procedures done when you don't really need them, instead of just staying up with your annual exams and your annual blood work and seeing your chiropractor and functional and alternative medicine doctors and massage therapists and physical therapists for really proactive preventative health care. I've always believed that. And I come from a medical background. My dad's an anesthesiologist. I have uncles in medicine. I wanted to go to medical school for genetics. But I really believe that we do control the outcomes of our life. Doesn't mean that things aren't going to hit us like they did my mom. Now, if I had, 10 women in my maternal genetic, ancestry that all had breast cancer and all had succumbed to this disease, maybe that would be a little bit of a different story. But I've just elected never to have it. And I'm really grateful, quite honestly, that I haven't. But at AGS, we don't look at anything illness and disease related. We don't look at ancestry because that information has to be reported to public databases. That's the only way that science can become more accurate over time. And we don't do paternity. Everything is direct health and wellness.
Well, one of the things that really got me excited was the fact that in my office, I've lost count of how many people are on diets. And, my best friend lost 40 pounds, being on a keto diet. My other friend is a vegan. And I am so, you and I have talked about this before. That's the least favorite patient that I have is the weight loss patient. I'd rather work with any other symptom or situation than that, because weight loss is so not easy and everybody has different things. And what I really appreciate about this testing is it does give us a little bit of information about behavior as well. Like, some of us know that we tend to be a little bit of addictive. Maybe we can, do things that are bingey, or we just know that we have a hard time breaking certain habits. I find it really interesting that this test can actually give us a little bit of insight. Not that it gives us an excuse to be an addict or eat more than we should or buy more than we should or whatever that behavior is, but it does kind of give you like, okay, this is going to be a little bit more challenging for me because not only do I have a weight problem, but I do tend to, have maybe a metabolic issue or an addictive personality where it's harder for me than somebody else. Right. And we are all so unique. Right. And thinking this one-size-fits-all approach, this profile kind of takes all of that out of the picture, because that's not, how do I even say it? Blood work is transient. Every 120 days, we're making new red blood cells, right? We can do blood work. We can see if things are getting better or not. Our genes are our genes.
Right.
So, it's also a great investment in yourself to know this, because it's not something you're going to have to do constantly. I guess you would have to do it as more testing becomes available, to keep up to date. But it's not one of those things that you're going to kind of have to always redo like you would with blood work, right? So I think there's just so many good things about the report that you get. And by the way, it's like looking here, 37 pages. It's very detailed.
Yeah, it's really detailed. And in fact, the report comes in 3 sections. So we have this genetic summary highlights page, which is kind of the 30,000-foot overview of roughly 63 variations on 51 genes that exist in your body that we know scientifically and medically validated through peer-reviewed research studies. And our premium health and wellness report is actually backed by over 1.9 million lives in researched data. That's a lot of people to have backing the recommendations in one report. The second section is a summary section. It's 6 pages. It goes into more detailed information about what you read on the genetic summary highlights page. And then what we're really proud of is our very detailed nutrigenetic health report. That is really the scientific theoretical data behind the report. It's easy to read, understand, and implement. I will say that 90+% of our clients, either through our providers or through our B2B programs, don't really dive into that section of the report because it kind of freaks them out and they're not so much interested in the data and the science. They just really want the actionable information in the first 7 pages, and that's totally cool. But there's a lot to extrapolate out of that section of the report. And then we also include like 4 or 5 pages of research studies that back the report. So people who are really wanting to dive into that science have the resources and references to start doing that. Every recommendation has a minimum of 3 peer-reviewed, validated research studies behind it, most of them somewhere between 5 and 10. So all that being said, I want to go back to what you originally talked about, which was the behavior section and the weight loss. Weight loss is huge in our culture. Everybody's trying, the latest and greatest fad or this diet or that diet. We are a quick fix culture. And I was doing a webinar interview with one of our providers who's a holistic nutrition and wellness expert launching her own nutrition company this fall. We're having a conversation with her viewers, much like we are today, a little bit more interactive, just because they could pipe in, on this concept of calorie counting and how we've become such a crazy calorie counting culture. When in actuality, if you'll just eat to your genetics, and if you can learn some things about your behaviors that you can say to yourself, oh my gosh, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm not crazy. I'm not an emotional wreck. What I learned on my genetic report, number 1, is I need more complex carbohydrates in my diet. And
I learned that too. Kellie, that was so, girl, it was so liberating because I am so over protein. And don't get me wrong, we need protein. I'm not saying that, but I knew intuitively I needed more carbohydrates too. And it was just so nice to see that my intuition was right. And that, with the quick fix culture, you start becoming mental about food. Oh my God, should I have rice? I don't know. You start getting so unbalanced with eating that it was, I will say with my report, I was like, yes, I do need carbohydrates more than protein for my body type.
Here's what I hope your listeners can take away from that. And go preach this as loud as you can. Stand on your rocks, your pillars, the top of your house, your rooftops, whatever you want to stand on, your soapboxes, whatever you want to stand on. Complex carbohydrates. There is not 1 ounce of science anywhere in the world that says your cells from the top of your head to the tip of your toes and the tips of your fingers does not need carbohydrate. It's energy production, it's fuel for our body, better sleep, better brain function. We need it to control blood sugar levels. We need it for everything. It is our primary source of energy. I think the reason we're all becoming so mental about food is we're not eating enough carbohydrates, or we're not eating the right kinds of carbohydrates. The word carb in our culture has become a 4-letter word, and that's really unfortunate. Simple carbohydrates should be what we're concerned about. Chips, sugar. The sugar intake in our culture and by our kids is absolutely out of control. We're a fast food society. We do not take the time to prepare meals, to really buy organic, whole foods and prepare our meals at home ahead of time. Now, I will say that there's a huge push in our culture towards that. I love seeing it, and it's awesome. But a ketogenic diet or a diet that's steeped in all fat or all protein really does not fuel the body and help with blood sugar levels like we need it to. We need our brains to be working at optimal level every single day, whether you're working as a professional or you're raising children or whatever you're doing. We need our brains to operate at optimum every single day, day in and day out. And we also have a culture that is dying from diabetes. That's a problem with blood sugar levels. If we will eat more complex carbohydrates, understand what kinds of fats, mono versus polyunsaturated fats, are best for our genotype, and then understand that there are certain behaviors that we may be genetically prone to, like food cravings, sweet tooth, emotional eating, addictive behaviors, and then also understanding how our body responds to short-term and long-term stress, and how we can help control that through our foods we eat. Well, at AGS, we call it your genetic dietary profile. So the optimum percentage of carbohydrates, fats, and proteins for your body. The micronutrients where we might be deficient. So if we can fill in those micronutrient gaps, that helps our cells come to life again. And that if we eat to our macronutrient wheel, if we match our meal to our wheel, as we call it at AGS, that a lot of the things like food cravings, sweet tooth, emotional eating that may be hidden in your genes will actually just turn off, because they don't have to fire up when you're fueling your body with the right macronutrients and taking good care of yourself. So it's a huge aha moment. What we're seeing is radical transformation in body, metabolism, and also in fat, the way the body stores or releases fat, just getting on the right kinds of fats. It's really fascinating. I think one of the greatest gifts in our entire report is helping the world understand, one, that we need more complex carbohydrates. Number two, if you have behavioral issues like cravings and sweet tooth and emotional eating, that may just be hidden in your genes, and changing your macronutrient and your nutrition plan will often take care of that by itself. But 2/3 of the population is prone to gaining weight or maintaining stubborn weight when over-consuming monounsaturated fats. We are
stop there for a second.
Yeah.
Holy cow. When I got my report back, I'm like, literally every good fat, and to be clear, monounsaturated fats are good fats, right? That's olive oil. That's the almonds. That's avocados, right? So all the fats that Jennifer, me, is putting into her body are not the best type for me. And my mind was like blown. Not that they're bad, but I was only literally consuming monounsaturated fats.
Right.
And since our conversation, I've been using some grapeseed oil and changing the nuts that I eat and stuff just to get some variety, because we do hear, avocados are really good for you. Well, they are really good for you, right? But it's like you get in the zone even with the healthy foods that you miss other foods. Sorry, when I got my report, I was like, what is this all about? What is happening? My olive oil, everything that you would say would be healthy is not necessarily the best for me all of the time.
Well, that's right. And in moderation, it's really important you keep consuming them. The key word is overconsumption.
Yeah, I was over-consuming them, and I had no clue.
Yeah.
No clue.
Yeah, and so here's what's really interesting. So you've made that change, and it's been maybe about 3 or 4 weeks now.
Mm-hmm.
How are you feeling?
I feel great, and it's funny because I've had a lot of dietary changes, and my listeners know I've had health issues and all that. Because of health issues, I've taken things in and taken things out, and I'm becoming very aware of how I feel as I change different foods. And I definitely have noticed a decrease in inflammation not having olive oil anymore. And I was also on this big avocado kick there for a while too. That was funny because I would eat it and I'm like, I didn't necessarily want it, but it was a good fat. And because I'm not eating meats right now, I'm thinking, well, Jennifer, you need to get some more good. You know what I'm saying? But even though in my gut I was like, I don't really want this, but I should be eating it. No, I probably should have had a handful of cashews instead.
Right.
So it does give you such an education, which seems like a little thing, but it's kind of not. It's a big thing.
It's a huge thing. And I'll tell you, this is where we're seeing a change in body composition, right? And if people will change their perspective from weight loss, I want to change my weight, to I want to change my body composition, and we get away from calorie counting to looking at macronutrients and how we're consuming them. And the other key component here is, are your listeners consuming macronutrients, carbohydrates, fats, and protein? Think in threes. All three of those things need to be consumed together in combination with each other, because they're each important to synthesis and breakdown at a cellular level of the others. So for example, protein is so important for the synthesis of carbohydrates and fat. Carbohydrates are essential for the synthesis of protein and fat. And fat's essential for the synthesis of protein and carbohydrates. And all foods have a thermic effect. The lowest one is fat, so it's easiest to digest, right? Or it's a low thermic food, right? Where it's harder to digest and move out, where protein is the fastest one and carbohydrates are in the middle. This is why understanding how your body metabolizes fats is so important. So if you think about this, and this is what was happening with somebody like you, I'm going to cook my salmon in olive oil. Then I'm going to make this beautiful side salad with all these gorgeous vegetables, really bright and colorful. But I'm going to make an olive oil based salad dressing, or buy an olive oil or safflower oil or corn or canola oil salad dressing that's already pre-made. That's all monounsaturated fats. But I'm going to add an avocado to that salad. I'm going to throw on a handful of slivered almonds. What you've done is layered all of these monounsaturated fats on top of each other. So you have olive oil in the salmon, you have olive oil or canola or corn oil or vegetable oil in the salad, you've got avocados, and you have almonds. What happens to somebody like you is your body goes, whoa. First of all, it takes me a long time to break down fat anyway, because it's a low thermic food. Now I have all these monounsaturated fats, and I genetically don't have the ability to metabolize those. So what happens? Jennifer gets sluggish, her energy decreases, she doesn't necessarily sleep well, she feels like she overate when she had this beautiful, healthy meal, and you start storing or maintaining stubborn weight because you're over-consuming monounsaturated fats. A simple change like cooking the salmon in sesame oil or grapeseed oil, making your own quick salad dressing at home that's grapeseed oil based or walnut oil based, doing a quarter of an avocado, and instead of throwing a handful of almond slivers on there, choose cashews or walnuts or pecans. Those polyunsaturated fats, your body, Jennifer, has an easier time breaking down. So now your body's not storing and that stubborn weight or putting on fat. You feel better, you have more energy, you feel lighter, you don't feel like you ate a big heavy meal, you're sleeping better, and your body is releasing that fat faster and moving it out of the system, absorbing what it needs, getting rid of what it doesn't. Your body composition is going to change pretty quickly depending on your health awareness and effort score, which is another part of our test.
Yeah, I mean, this is a huge report. There's so much to know.
Well, and it all works in conjunction with each other, right? So the premium report has 9 categories: macronutrients, fats, beverages, vitamins and supplements, behaviors, exercise and activity, stress response, general health, which includes blood sugars, blood pressure, cholesterol, and then a proprietary AGS score called a health awareness and effort score. That score basically says if genetics are 30% of the equation, and I want your listeners to understand that if any genetic testing company tells you that the be-all end-all is genetics, they're lying to you. Genetics is about 30% of the equation. You still have to make really good behavioral decisions and environmental choices to achieve the outcomes that you desire. The control is in your hand. How are your genetics interacting with food and nutrients? That's nutrigenomics. How are your environmental or behavioral choices either working with and turning on your good genes or circumventing your bad genes? That's epigenetics, right? So we have the control and the power to optimize our health and wellness. The question is, how are we doing it given our own personal biology? If you search the internet and you come up with the latest and greatest fad diet, that has nothing to do with your personal biology. You have no idea if it's going to work for you or not. If you do what your friend did or your neighbor did or your husband did or your sister did or your best friend did or your twice removed uncle's wife, whether it's supplements, shakes, bars, food regimens, diet programs, you're guessing and you're going into trial and error period. You're wasting your time, you're wasting your money, you're wasting your resources, you're wasting your energy, and you potentially could be wasting your metabolism.
Well, I shared with you when my boyfriend was doing the Whole30, and I did it with him for support. And wow, Kelly, was I probably the sickest, and did it turn on some autoimmune issues? Because for me, especially knowing I don't do well with certain fats and I have some other metabolism issues, it created such a level of inflammation in my body. I gained 15 pounds. Mm-hmm. I looked like the Marshmallow Man, and I couldn't walk when I got out of bed in the morning. Right. So yeah, these diets are not unique to you, and there's so many variables, and we can't go by other people's genetics and environment and jobs and stress and relationships and how all of that plays into them being a human being and extrapolate that onto us because they look great because they lost 40 pounds.
Right.
And so it's really, really it's cool to see this.
You know, I want to talk about the diet programs real quick. This is really important, and I want your listeners to understand this. I and AGS in no way, shape, or form are telling people to stop going on, specific food plans or food regimens. In fact, there's nothing wrong with that temporarily if you're trying to lose an excessive amount of weight, or your doctor has you on prescribed programs, or you have certain food allergies, or maybe issues with your gut health or your microbiome. We have a microbiome test coming out this year. Gut health is so huge. We won't even get into that right now, but so many times that's part of the culprit. So we're in no way, shape, or form saying that. What we're saying is we can test your genes, and we can tell you exactly what your body is actually desiring to achieve optimal health and wellness and to function at its best.
So you can choose the correct program for you instead of just guessing.
Right. That doesn't mean that you may want to go on, if somebody's trying to lose 25 pounds quickly, it doesn't mean they can't go on a Whole30 or go on a ketogenic diet, but do it with your genetic information in hand. I'll give you an example. And then when you're done losing your 25 pounds, what's your maintenance plan? Well, people who don't have this genetic test and a genetic dietary profile don't know what their maintenance plan is. So they wind up staying on a ketogenic or a Whole30 or another program that may not necessarily be in their body's best interest for the long term. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And that's the whole thing. That's why I think this is beautiful. So if you're a person that those diets work for you, that's great. If not, it helps you kind of tailor what you need for you, but you do have your genetics as this great roadmap. So you're going to get those maximum effects of whatever, if it's whatever. And I'm not trying to beat up on the ketogenic diet. It's just the latest fad. And I'm sure they're going to say in a few years, it's the worst thing ever because that's what our culture does. So I'm not, it's just there. I mean, vegan, it doesn't matter, whatever it is, you know where I'm coming from.
Well, we do with diets and nutrition plans in our culture, what we do with leadership and politics, right? We go this way and that didn't work. So we go this way and that doesn't work. So we go this way. Let me give you a story about the ketogenic diet in conjunction with the AGS genetic health and wellness test. This is so beautiful. So this gal is in her 30s. She is a high-level executive for a organization that I work closely with. She is gaga crazy over this. She's tested her kids, her parents, her sisters and brothers. She's sending me people every single day. She did keto for about a year and a half with her husband. Her husband had extraordinary results on keto. Mm-hmm. She felt bad. She couldn't sleep. She gained weight. She just was sluggish. It just did not work for her. She was putting on fat in places she didn't want to put it on. So she finally said, forget it. We ran her test and we realized, number one, she needed 65% carbohydrates in her macronutrient wheel.
65?
65%.
Wow.
So our carbohydrates macronutrients wheels. We have 7 that all individuals fall into depending on the algorithm of their report. Yours is a 45% carb wheel. Mine is a 55% carb wheel. Hers was a 65%. Our lowest is 40%.
Okay.
What happened was we also found out that she has the tendency to gain weight or maintain stubborn weight when over consuming monounsaturated fats. We also dialed in her exercise and activity ratio. So we knew exactly what percentage was best for her body to burn fat and build lean muscle and positively affect cholesterol and blood pressure at, I think it was like 60% power, weight training, strength training, body weight kind of exercises versus 40% cardio. She was doing a keto diet, all monounsaturated fats, all cardio, right? Because cardio is quote unquote how everybody loses weight. You got to do more cardio. That's not necessarily true. If you up your carbohydrates to match your macronutrient wheel, you switch out your fats to polys, and you up your power and reduce your cardio, you enjoy exercise more, and that matches her genetic profile, right? So we built a program that was just for her. So she's like getting great results. She's loving it, feels good. We're implementing this with her whole entire company this fall, 2,500 people. So I have, we go to get gelato the other day, and we were going to have a planning meeting for her company's launch this fall. And she said, I have to tell you something. She said, I decided to do an experiment because she loves data. She said, I've been back on keto for the last 3 months since I got my genetic health report. And I said, yeah, why'd you go back to keto? She said, I did it as an experiment. This time, I did it all with polyunsaturated fats, no monos.
Cool.
I feel amazing. I dropped the weight. Now I'm adding back in the complex carbohydrates, and I'm not doing as much cardio. I'm doing more power exercises. So she added the strength training exercises. She went ahead and went back to the ketogenic diet, but all with polyunsaturated fats versus monos, which is what she was doing before. She didn't have any of the adverse effects that she had doing it the first time. The whole point of the story is, it's not that you can't do a ketogenic diet or a Whole30 diet or a vegan or vegetarian diet. You can. But if you know what your body genetically is sensitive to or will positively respond to, wouldn't you want to know that information? Because then you can make the behavioral and the lifestyle choices that empower you to optimize your health and wellness instead of being at the mercy of a so-called fad diet or recommended plan that may or may not work for you. This is really just about using personal biology to dial in and get faster results and feel better.
Well, Kellie, I think that for my listeners, this is really, really good stuff. And, the fact that, we're going, we can go on for hours, you and I, but that we really dialed in on diet. But I do want to say you do have one on skin that I'm so excited to have patients do. And you also have one I want to touch on really quickly before we run out of time. There's a smaller one that we can do. And we had talked about that it may be good if you don't want to commit to do the big one because it's a little bit more expensive. The one, help me, which is the NutriFit.
Yeah.
And that one is great. Like, I have a lot of women who are thinking about having babies and who are, it would be a great information to know to get healthy before you have this baby. What are my genes? What should I be eating? What's going to be the most nutritious? So I even think that program or package is really great. And I can't even speak to the microbiome one. I'm on my own journey with that, and learning, and doing all of, as an aside, all these nasal swabs, which blows my mind how much is living in our sinus passages. So when you get the microbiome test, I'm going to have you on again because I can talk about the gut all day too. But anyway, the NutriFit is super, super helpful too. And I think that maybe you want to do that for your kids, or maybe you're thinking, well, how do I stay healthy, or just some basic things, So I think you have a little bit of everything. I think you're pretty much not gonna, what's the right term? You're gonna be missing out if you don't do this type of testing, honestly. And also I want to say, you still need to see doctors like me. You still need to do your blood work. I still want poop tests. I still want adrenal tests in my office. In my office, I always say, if you're seeing me, I'm collecting some kind of pee, spit, poop, blood, something. So it's not that it takes the place of those things, because those things, it just kind of gives you now the whole picture, and where we can fine tune things and get people feeling better where maybe we were just stuck. And that's what was so exciting to me, because there's so many people, like we've gotten 75% better with whatever health condition it is, but there's just that something that keeps me up at night going, dang it, what am I missing? What am I missing? And I think this is a big component of what's missing.
Well, I think it is too. And all of those things work so well in conjunction with each other. So for example, our micronutrient test, we test for genetic predispositions to either absorb micronutrients through the intestinal system, or the body's ability to convert inactive forms to active forms. So there's two kind of tests there depending on the micronutrient. The issue there is we're looking at genetic predispositions, and we can tell you where your caution markers are, but we can't tell you what your actual levels are. For example, my doctor just rang me yesterday with my vitamin Bs, my folic, and my vitamin D, because I get my micronutrient blood panel done once a year when I go to my, annual appointment. The great thing about doing the blood work along with this is that you get the full picture. Mm-hmm. What blood work doesn't do, or the other microbiome and stuff like that, is really look at the genes. So like when we do our drug sensitivity test, our pharmacogenomics test, we look at the body's ability to genetically process. So every medication that processes through the liver goes through a genetic pathway. How are those genetic pathways metabolizing that medication? If it's too fast, you're going to need more of that medication to get to the desired effect. If it's too slow, you actually need less, so you don't have toxic buildup in the system. And then you start affecting other organs. So the work that you're doing is critically important. I think this test, whether it's the NutriFit, which is just macros, exercise ratio, saturated versus unsaturated fat, and 5 micronutrients, that's it. For youth, adolescents, and the elderly, or those that are on a budget, perfect test. Mm-hmm. You want the Mac Daddy and have all 9 categories, do the premium. But for individuals either listening online or coming into your office that want to draw a line in the sand, step over it and say, you know what, I'm going to make an investment in me, my health. I'm going to start fresh. I'm going to learn about my genes. I'm going to start making decisions that match my personal biology, so I can get the outcomes that I desire. I'm going to stop the madness, stop the trial and error, stop the dangerous fads, stop listening to everybody else, and I'm going to start listening to me. We were all created to be exactly who we are. You sitting in your chair, me sitting in my chair. The program that I look at your genetic profile, and if I ate and followed the genetics of you, that would not work for me. Mm-hmm. Because mine are actually quite different. I need a different exercise and activity ratio. I can consume monounsaturated fats pretty well when you can't. I need more carbohydrates and more fat than you do in your diet. You need less carbohydrates and more protein than I do. So if I were going to listen to you and your recommendations because it's worked for you, I would have the opposite effect, to be really, really frustrated. And you and I are both generally pretty healthy, averaged age, vibrant women. Mm-hmm. And so that's really where the beauty of this is. And now that the science can tell us accurately this information, it really behooves us to, buy less coffee and eat out a little bit less, invest in a genetic test. It's once and done. You have it forever. And I think that we should offer your listeners a special promotion for a period of time. So when you decide,
that sounds great. I'm not sure what it'll be. I'm good with whatever you something. What was I going to say too? Really quickly, because I am running out of time, and this is probably controversial, and I don't really care. I would love to see one on vaccinations.
Yeah.
Wow, what a game changer. If we can predict or figure out what medications we cannot process, so if you go to your primary and you get sick and you go, you know what, my genetics don't do well with penicillin, wouldn't that take away the argument of a one-size-fits-all approach for vaccines? Because we are living in a time where we're losing personal choice, informed consent, autonomy as human beings. And the argument has always been, for me, I would do whatever, but let's test first because we're not all the same. And the argument has been, well, there's no testing. Well, to me, like, you've completely created a window, freaking not a window, like the door is blown open. We should be able to have that available. And we should be able to say, you know what, I can't do this one because maybe my genes can't support that and I can get really sick. So we can make educated decisions, not just with food, but with all drugs, you know, prescribed, injected, whatever they may be. So that's just my personal opinion.
Well, there's a lot of
see that someday in my lifetime.
Yeah, there's a lot of research actually happening right now in the realm of vaccines as it relates to genetics. There's going to be so much that we see in the world of genomics and, you know, medical genetics, behavioral genetics, nutrigenomics, epigenetics. There's going to be so much that happens. What I would encourage your viewers to do is don't get caught up with companies who are preaching buy this product for, you know, nutrigenomics or epigenetics or whatever. Do your research. Get your own test done. You don't need to go out and buy all kinds of crazy products to turn on your genes. You just need to know what your genes actually say so that you can start using whole foods, methylated, chelated, activated supplements in the right dosage and the right quantities for you. In fact, I don't take, even though my genetic test says I could potentially be deficient in certain micronutrients, unless my blood work says that, or my alternative and physicians actually say, listen, we need to up your vitamin D or up your B's or up your folic acid, I don't take them. Yeah. And the reason is because that's wasting money. I'd rather get the test, do the blood work, know exactly where I stand, and then give my body exactly what it needs to perform at an optimum level. You can decrease a lot of inflammation just through the food you consume, the supplements you choose to take, the fats you choose to consume, and things like that, all on its own without having to spend hundreds of dollars of every month on, you know, this, that, or the next thing. I'm not saying that a lot of those products aren't great, because they are. AGS is a product agnostic company. We don't sell any nutritional products. We don't do any micronutrient testing. We don't sell any bars or shakes or anything like that. We may at some point down the line in the future, who knows, if we develop things that match each one of our macronutrient wheels.
Right.
But we're really looking at, you know, who can we partner with in the industry that's already doing that really well, that believes what we believe, which is we need to customize this to the unique needs of each individual. We start in your office with your patients and your clients and your listeners because they trust you. They have a relationship with you, and they'll listen to you. And because they listen to you, they're going to get results. They're going to feel better and be happier and healthier.
All right. So on that note, anybody who's interested in doing any of the genomic tests with me, I'm going to offer 15% off, which is really nice because I honestly don't think it's terrible. And in compare the regular prices, especially in comparison to some of the functional testing that patients are accustomed to getting in my office. So if you listen to the podcast, you make it through this far, because I know it's a long one this time. Just mention that, and I will definitely honor that for you. Kellie, thank you so much for spending so much time with us today. And I definitely hope that my listeners enjoyed it and got some good stuff out of it. And I've got 2 new reports in for my patients this week, and I'm like a little kid. I'm like, oh my God, I need to go download this from Kendall because it's reported. I get excited about when we can figure out what's wrong and how we can support people to get them feeling better and empower them to feel better, and them going, oh my gosh, I can do this, or I didn't know this. Or like me, intuitively I knew something, I wasn't doing it right, but I was eating good foods, right?
Right.
And so it's hard when, you're eating good foods, but they may not be the best for you. So it's not all of us home eating junky foods either.
Right. Well, thanks for having me. Let's continue the discussion.
Yes.
We could even take the premium report and break it down into sections, or, discuss some different things, or pull a group of your listeners together that all do the test and do a big report overview all together. There's so many fun things that we can do, but our partnership with you is really important to us. Serving the needs of your clients and helping get this information into their hands it's such a gift. The client wins first, you win, we win as a byproduct of that. But nothing beats education and awareness and understanding and tapping in to who you were created to be to become your greatest possibility. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. For my listeners, thank you so much for listening to Seriously Girl, Listen to Your Body. You can check out this podcast and other podcasts at www.drjenpodcast.com. We're also on Facebook as Seriously Girl, Listen to Your Body, as well as Instagram. If you have any ideas or on topics that you want to hear more about, please message me. Kellie, have a great day, and we will talk again soon.
I look forward to it. Bye-bye.